So in the whole span of Trek history, let's say, that you worked on, how many different Klingon molds and designs do you think you did?
There were somewhere between 32 or 35 that were full head molds. And when all of a sudden we had a Klingon episode coming up, we had a gigantic marble table, and we'd open all these molds. Most of them had a cast of the actor's head and a two-piece mold on it. And so there's three pieces to a mold. And if you turned it upside down, it was hollow on the inside. Would drill a hole through it. And through that hole, we would inject the latex, whip it up, put it in a big gun, shoot it into the mold, fill it, and it was all clamped shut, into the oven, vulcanize the rubber, and we'd be ready for them. A few of the times, I wanted to be able to change a head and not to have to go back through and do an entire sculpt. So I would take and make a little piece that may be about 5 inches tall and somewhere 3.5, 4 inches wide. It was just a little teeny kind of a plate with very thin edges on it, and that would glue right over the top of an existing forehead, and it would change the look a little bit.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so I could go beyond those. I'm talking about the 35. I could go on and make 50 different ones with those.
So 2 follow-up questions. One going back to hair, but on that question. So if you were very, 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 very overly dedicated, more than Trekyards, and you watched every Klingon episode, could you actually see the same foreheads repeated? 5 years apart, different Klingons. 35 is quite a lot, but yes,
definitely. Yeah.
Okay. And same question. So back to the women with the look. Obviously, that you gave the Klingon males longer hair, and they were all wigs. How many of the women makeups were real hair based or wigs?
None of them. It was every Klingon wore a wig. Nobody, because the foreheads they had all went halfway back on the top of their head. So that way of getting rid of that line was to put a wig on.
Wow.
That's a lot of wigs. That's a lot of wigs. With the hairstylists, with different ones we had over the years, they had rooms with all these wigs pinned on blocks and things. And then it depended, too, many times on, like, the color of the skin. Because we had a color called Malibu tan, which was tanny, but it still was a swarthy brown, all the way to almost, I want to say, ebony color. You have a black person coming in to play a Klingon, and you didn't want to put Malibu tan makeup on them because it wouldn't look right, and it wouldn't even paint up properly. So we actually tried, unless if it was a person of color, whether it's Latino or black, we would try to match their skin tones or only go a shade darker, because then you don't have to do their hands, you don't have to do their neck or anything.
Yeah. Now, going back to war-specific makeup for a second, how long did it take to apply that? I mean, in the early days, and then compared to later on, did it get more streamlined? Like, how long was the process?
Really streamlined. In the very beginning, it took a little over 2 hours to glue the forehead down and to paint it, to get his. Then he'd go to hairdressing, then come back to us for beard and mustache. When he finally got down to Deep Space Nine, with basically a latex type of paint, it could be pre-painted, so it could be totally pre-painted. In the beginning, the makeup was made out of castor oil. In the ending part, it was made out of, basically, it was like Elmer's glue and acrylic, and that could all be pre-painted, powdered, ready to go. So his makeup actually got down to 20 minutes, because Sonny Berman was my lab technician, and Sonny took over Michael Dorn, and he was able to pre-glue the inside of the head and the nose. And just when Michael sat in the chair, all Sonny had to do was literally pop this onto his forehead, pop his nose on, blend a little makeup in so this all blended together, and then Michael would go get breakfast or something, and he'd come back and, because it didn't take long to put the mustache and beard on, but it timed tremendously, was cut on his makeup.
And was it the same for every regular Klingon, say a Gowron or a Martok?
No.
Or okay.
No. They usually those were made up on the time of it. We had the time with them, but we still had that new type of paint as opposed to the castor oil paint. We had the acrylic paint type of work. It could have been done, yes, it could, but it also applies. It's a matter of pouring it out. It's very liquidy, and taking your sponge and and putting it all together. And then you, instead of trying to match up this paint to this paint, you go ahead and paint his whole face with this other paint.
Well, speaking of other actors, there's a quite interesting DS9 episode where we see our human hero characters and Odo, who I guess is human at that point, spoilers, get the Klingon treatment. And so now you've got giving a character with a certain sort of look.
He loved it. And he loved it.
And then put the makeup on. So how do you approach... I mean, was that another cookie cutter? Was it a bit more custom? Was there a bit more... I mean, how far do you go into the Klingon vibe without taking away from their recognisable feel? And because they're going to be in a situation with literally like 20 other Klingons, did you approach it any differently, or was it very much just another Klingon day? Because they had some pretty unique looks. I mean, Miles O'Brien's makeup was very, very interesting.
The thing with Rene is that it was his own face. As his Odo face, it was his own face with all the wrinkles removed, just a smooth mask that goes over it. So the contours were still all there with Rene. Then it was a matter of just the Klingon forehead, the teeth, and the nose. It's still Rene from his eyebrows down the rest of the face. His mouth is the same. Even though he might have a beard and a mustache on. It's all the same.
And for
so
the other ones?
His own character came through.
But for the other characters, for Sisko and Bashir, is there any specific way you approach doing those makeup to make it a bit more unique, or a bit more... Were you trying to make it stand in a crowd and not be noticed?
When they do their performance and their face, the idea is to be able to recognize them, not to disguise them or do something, or make it so simple that you would look at it and say, well, I don't believe it. It's too simple. So it's like keeping everybody on the same plane.
Yeah, so you didn't design new foreheads for them specifically. You just used the cookie cutter ones.
Oh no! For Rene and we did new foreheads for them. Yes, we did.
Okay. I think that. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Then you might have found that same forehead though.
Later, yeah.
On Enterprise.
Cool.
Turned upside down and backwards.
Nice.
Interesting.
In watching Star Trek, as I tend to do, I've noticed that sometimes Worf, does he only have the top teeth done?
Yes.
'Cause sometimes his bottom teeth. Did you ever do the bottom teeth at all?
No, but with the makeup artist but we have a nicotine stain, it's called, in a jar. It can wear off, especially you got to be careful if they eat something. So the bottom teeth were supposed to have makeup on them, and if he wore it off and somebody wasn't watching, the bottom teeth might look a little nicer than the top teeth.
There's the odd time I noticed that, especially in Deep Space Nine, but I just wanted to make sure.
That was when Michael wanted in and out quick, so it was like
Yeah.
And it dried very quickly. It was just a matter. It had a little brush and you just painted it on. I finally the Ferengis had upper and lower teeth, but Klingons we never did lower teeth with them because it takes just as long to do a set of lower teeth and then to line them all up. It's time and money.
And it's funny you were talking about perfect teeth because I actually did one of my captain's logs. I talked about Klingon teeth because in Errand of Mercy, Kor has like the perfect pearly whites when he smiles. And I'm like, what happened to Klingon teeth over the years? Did they just not...
He's a brusher. He cares.
Yeah. They did this with a Ferengi. There is a picture that's floating around where I was standing with a guy, and I guess the set photographer came and took a picture. He didn't have his teeth in. And here he is with all costume, makeup, and the whole thing. And the two of us are smiling. And his teeth are, like mine. I think if we could have cut that picture and thrown it away somewhere, because it ruins the whole image of the Ferengi.
Yeah.
So I have two last questions on the Klingons.
Yep.
You had an actor, J.G. Hertzler, who came back to play multiple Klingons multiple times in
Yes.
games and Enterprise and DS9.
So did Casey Biggs.
dedicated Wigs. But when you had him every time, obviously that's a lot of appearances to remember, but beyond the Martok, did you custom do makeups for him because you knew him so well, or was it still cookie cutter when he did a separate game, or was it Pin Enterprise? Was that another, or did you design specially?
I usually one of the principals. We design new things for principals. It's most of the time when you were talking about the cookie cutter types, it was for background, or maybe somebody that only had one line and was going to be very quick. But it was a principal. Everything was done. I mean, that's hence the collection of 30-some molds.
And that leads on to the last question I have. So in Enterprise, the prequel, obviously, the Klingons had some of a different look. It was more rugged, more bearskins and such. Did you approach that makeup any different since they were the earliest, the most prequel? Did you do anything different?
No, it didn't, because it was like, for me, even being a prequel, you weren't talking about that many years in the history. It's not billions or whatever. No. It's a very short period of time. So I know in the pilot show, our Klingon, he has a very, I want to say, a cleaner look. It wasn't as rugged and nasty or wrinkly as some of the things. And then it depended also on the age of the person playing the part. If you're going to have like Holocaust and some of the original guys that came back to play in Enterprise, I think it was, putting age into the forehead so it wasn't so nice and smooth. Where in Enterprise, in our first Klingon there, he was a younger guy. But that was very important, is trying to put the same age into the forehead that we had in the face of the person. So there was some thinking to the process.
Awesome. Nice. So, Michael, what did you think of the new Klingons for the new movies?
I know the people that worked on them, and I know even a lot of Klingons aren't really. It was like that was supposedly a prequel, and it's like it seemed instead of going backwards, I don't, the thing is, I was involved with it so long that I couldn't have even thought of that. The designer on that show, he's not a makeup artist, he's a designer, and he does absolutely gorgeous.
Was that Neville Sinclair that did that?
Neville Page.
Yeah, Neville Page.
Neville does absolutely beautiful work, and J.J. Abrams approved it and everything. So, but it's not somewhere where I would have gone, especially going back. In fact, as I said, it wasn't that far back to be able to make a major change in it.
Okay.
I mean, would you?
We don't change that much in that period of humans haven't changed that much.
Although I think the justification behind these is they're just a different part of Kronos. It's just a regional thing.
Well, we did that too. On some place, we wound up with northern Klingons and southern Klingons. So that's how they justified
these were
darker
Western Klingons.
Yeah.
West Coast.
Did you? Bar the obvious odd design. I guess the only thing that really stood out is the what do you call them? The piercings. What do you think about having piercings inside of your ridges? Would you ever? Is that something you could see happening
on a Klingon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't, because I had that on other characters. Our Green Boys, the Orions, I loved, and of course you'd never seen a male Orion before, so that's where we really were able to pull a lot of that stuff out, from research and things. But I don't think I'd have ever. I wouldn't have, but another designer comes in and they see a different image.
Well, I guess the last question is, what's your favourite and least favourite thing about working on the makeup or the design of Klingons?
The least favorite thing of designing Klingons.
Gotta pick something.
I don't. I didn't. It's like my whole 18 years there, I really enjoyed it. As far as with a Klingon, having to do the balance. It's like it all became a process that in line that had to be done. Coming up with a new design for the forehead was interesting. Designing a nose that would go with the forehead. I had learned to make teeth years ago. I made all the Klingon teeth because John Chambers, who was Planet of the Apes, John taught me. John was a dental technician to begin with, and he taught me how to make teeth. So I would sit down and make half a dozen pair of Klingon teeth if we had a half a dozen speaking new Klingons coming in the door. And I loved it, just to get a cast of their teeth and grind the teeth down and kind of fit them out and work them out. So there's only one make-up in all of Star Trek that I didn't like, and I've only watched the show once. But we can talk about that later.
Okay, good tease.
Well, actually, that one question then: what's your favorite Klingon ridge that you've done over the years? And
we can assume Worf is probably high up there, but besides the obvious.
There were so many ridges. It was just fun that flipping around and designing the whole thing, and having it all come together. It wasn't. I didn't really have any Klingon forehead that I'd say I hate this, or I wouldn't have used it.
Well, I had to ask.
That's okay. No, it was one of the greatest experiences of my life, and I devoted a good section of my book, aside from my career before Star Trek, to the artwork and the background. That's it. It's all in there.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Michael, for joining us today to talk about Klingons. We definitely learned a lot, and hopefully you guys did as well. If you guys did, please hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video around with everyone you think might like it, because Star Trek, it's everywhere. So share it around.
And if you want to see more Michael Westmore and know about every single alien, then support us on Patreon, a monthly donation scheme, or a one-time donation, and we'll get him back and we'll just let him go on about his stories because they're bloody great.
Exactly.
Thank you, Michael.
So,
Thank you.
So until next time, I'm Captain Foley.
I'm Klingons.
Michael Westmore.
And this is his book. And remember, today is a good day to buy. Buy the book.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.